Namaste Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudire Nashtutai Shubhadreshu Nityam Bhagavati Seva Bhagavati Uttam Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. So continuing with the discussion on Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita by Srila Goswami, Volume 1, today we are starting new chapter, chapter 35, the remote corner of the world. Although Srila Prabhupada had been away from America for a year, his Krishna consciousness movement had flourished. By Krishna's grace and the devotees' attachment for him had grown. His disciples, having heard reports and seen photos of his triumphant tour of India, had felt inspired to increase their own preaching. In each American center, new devotees had been joining and were learning Prabhupada's teachings from the senior devotees. Already accepting Srila Prabhupada as their spiritual master, hundreds of newcomers were eagerly awaiting initiation. So much was the craze for Prabhupada because his disciples had been teaching who Prabhupada is and what Prabhupada's teachings are. And people were just accepting it wholeheartedly. How different from Prabhupada's first arrival in America alone in 1965. Walking the cold streets with no money and no temple, he had been ignored. Sometimes he had thought of quitting, taking a boat back to India. But he had maintained absolute faith. And now, less than 6 years later, in dozens of ISKCON centers throughout America, hundreds of disciples worshipped him and would throng ecstatically to receive him. Los Angeles, June 26, 1971. When Prabhupada had left Los Angeles a year ago, the political turmoil there had troubled his mind. But on returning, he found the devotees recovered. Faithfully, they were executing his orders to chant publicly. To chant publicly, distribute back to Godhead magazine and worship the deity of Rukmini Dwarkadish. In the gorgeously decorated Los Angeles temple, Prabhupada performed a large initiation ceremony, accepting dozens of new disciples. So this LA temple, the Los Angeles temple, Prabhupada called it New Dwarka Dham. And he called the deities Rukmini Dwarkadish. Normally everywhere he called them Radha Krishna. But only in this temple he called them Rukmini Dwarkadish. Why? There's a reason. Prabhupada said just like Dwarka Puri has disappeared in the ocean, California or maybe whole California or maybe LA, there'll be earthquake and this whole land will disappear in the ocean. When is it going to happen? We don't know. But yes, California has lots of earthquakes. And who knows when is it going to happen? So Prabhupada there. So that's why he named the deities Rukmini Dwarkadish. On June 27, Srila Prabhupada traveled from LA to San Francisco for the 5th annual Rath Yatra. 200 followers met him at the airport. How many devotees do we have? A reporter asked. Unlimited, Prabhupada said. Some admit and some don't admit. Admit you are a servant of Lord Krishna and your life will be a success. After 2 days in San Francisco, Prabhupada returned to Los Angeles and on July 16th flew to Detroit. Bhagwan Das, Prabhupada's governing body secretary for the Midwest, had preached vigorously in his zone, opening centers in St. Louis, Chicago, and other cities. Almost 300 devotees, most of whom had never seen Srila Prabhupada, assembled at the Detroit airport to receive him. Devotees had come from all over the Midwestern US and Eastern Canada to greet Srila Prabhupada at Detroit's metro airport. A red and gold throne stood in the center of the reception room. Yes, those days we could do that. A red and gold throne or a Vyasasana they took over there for Prabhupada to sit on. And the devotees were chanting Hare Krishna and dancing, awaiting Prabhupada's arrival. When the plane finally landed, all bliss broke loose. The disembarkation, Dolly joined the plane, but we couldn't see Srila Prabhupada. I became anxious. When would he enter the room? Suddenly a cry went up and I looked around. Devotees were bound down. Urukram. Srila Prabhupada entered the room as bright as a sun, and everyone immediately prostrated themselves on the floor. Not like the other times when we bowed down together, but this was like an overwhelming force hit us, and we were being thrown to our knees. When I stood up, I couldn't believe my eyes. There was Prabhupada. Almost everyone in the room was crying. Into them. My first glimpse of Prabhupada was through the lens of my camera, and I thought he looked just like he did in his pictures. I had only seen him in pictures, and now he looked just like in the pictures, only moving. All the devotees began to cry and fall to the ground. It was a transcendental emotional thing. I was watching all the older devotees, how much love they had for Srila Prabhupada. And I was feeling unqualified and sinful. Guru Kram. Prabhupada appeared powerful, yet at the same time delicate and soft, like a very wonderful flower. As he moved along very slowly, the devotees lined up and made an aisle for him to walk. He walked up to Kirtanan Maharaj, put a garland around, and embraced him. Kirtanan Maharaj was crying tears of ecstasy, and he looked like a little boy next to his father. Then Prabhupada went to Bhagwan and patted him on his head. Then he embraced Bhagwan, who also began to weep like a little boy who had just seen his father after a very long time. Vishwakarma. I arrived late. When I got there, I was afraid to look at Srila Prabhupada because I felt too fallen to look upon the pure representative of the Lord. So I stayed behind a wall of devotees, afraid to look. Finally, I realized this is ridiculous, as the perfection of the eyes is to behold the form of Krishna's pure devotee. I raised my head and I saw him sitting on his vyasa, drinking a cup of water. Never had I seen anyone drink water like this without touching the goblet to their mouth. The water poured from the cup like a shining silver stream straight into Srila Prabhupada's mouth and throat. And he finished the water in a few swallows. He appeared to be a grand sage from the spiritual realm, and as everyone chanted, he looked around at the devotees, smiling with great pleasure. Everyone was overwhelmed with transcendental joy, and I joined with over half the devotees in weeping. Prabhupada began speaking. This is very satisfying that so many devotees, boys and girls, are taking part in this great movement, Krishna consciousness movement. It's a very important movement because it is correcting the human civilization. It's a great defect in the modern civilization. People are accepting this body as self, and based on this mistake in the foundation, everything is going wrong. Accepting the body as a self is the beginning of all problems. The great philosophers, scientists, theologians, and thoughtful men do not know what's the defect. Recently, I was in Moscow, and so I had a nice talk with Professor of Indology, Professor Kotovsky. He was speaking that, Swamiji, after this annihilation of this body, everything is finished. So I was astonished that a learned professor, posing himself in a very responsible post, had no idea about the soul and the body, how they're different, how the soul is migrating from one body to another. As Prabhupada spoke, a voice announced over the public address system that the departure lounge had to be cleared for the next flight. They're speaking about ourselves, Prabhupada asked. We shall stop. All right, let's go. So that time we could go to the departure lounge. Actually, we could even go inside the plane also. Not the departing plane, but the departing plane. We could go inside. If there is an old person, we could take him to his seat and make him sit down and they come out. But now everything is changed. Cannot go beyond the security line. That evening in the temple room of Detroit's ISKCON Center, Srila Prabhupada sat on his Vyasasana before the deities of Lord Jagannath, Subhadra and Balram, while a devotee led the kirtan. Prabhupada played his kartas, looking around the room at his disciples. He was nodding his head, pleased to see them dancing and chanting. After the kirtan, he lectured. Just see how their characters are being formed, how they are being, how they are becoming, how they're becoming. So, how their faces are becoming brighter. It is practical. So our request is take full advantage of the center. You come here. It's being guided by one of my best disciples, Bhagavan Das. So he and others will help you. Please come regularly to the temple and take advantage of it. After his lecture, Prabhupada asked for question. Bahulashva raised his hand. Srila Prabhupada, what's the thing that will please you the most? Chant Hare Krishna, Prabhupada replied. And the devotee spontaneously cried out, Jai, Jai. Prabhupada, that is the simplest thing. You're chanting, I'm very much pleased. That's all. I came to your country to chant. That you would chant also along with me. You're helping me by chanting. So I'm pleased. But this tendency is very nice that you want to please me. That's very good. And to please me is not very difficult. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said that under my order, every one of you go preach and become spiritual master. What's that order? The order is whomever you meet, you talk to him about Krishna. Prabhupada emphasized that if one wanted to preach and represent Krishna, then he could not change the message of Krishna, but must repeat what Krishna said. I've come here for the first time, Prabhupada continued. But before me, Bhagavan Das, he has organized. And what's his credit? He has presented things as I told him. That's all. This is wonderful. In Los Angeles, also a program is going on very nicely. My disciple in charge there is Karan Thar. He's present here. He's simply doing what I instruct, and he's doing very nicely, first class. Everyone who comes, they come and are enchanted by the temple, with the activities, with the disciples. So this is the way, this is called parampara system. Do not concoct. So this is parampara system. Just follow and give the teachings as they are. As Prabhupada was leaving the temple that evening, the mother of one of his disciples approached him. You know, she said, these boys actually worship you. Yes, Prabhupada said, that is our system. I'm also worshipping my Guru Maharaj. The devotees around Prabhupada looked at one another and smiled. Although women had tried to make it appear extraordinary that Prabhupada disciples worshipped him, Prabhupada had taken it casually. One must worship the Guru. It was a Vaishnava standard and nothing to wonder at. Srila Prabhupada had so many centers in the US that to visit each one was not practical. During his year in India, many new centers had opened on the West Coast, in Florida, Texas, the Midwest, the East. Prabhupada said he had more establishments than wealthy businessmen and more residences. Were he to stay at each of his houses equipped, he couldn't visit them all in a year, especially to Indian audiences. He would cite the monthly expenditures for his centers. Though proud of ISKCON's growth, Prabhupada was never proud on his own account. He never considered using ISKCON for his own enjoyment. Whether he visited the center, his quarters were usually an apartment arranged at the last minute, often fraught with annoyances like noisy neighbors and incompetent cooks. At 75 years, his constant traveling was hardly an arrangement for his health and comfort. Prabhupada never felt complacent over the small success his society enjoyed, nor would he claim the credit for that success. Rather, he said it was due to the mercy of his spiritual master and the previous spiritual master. ISKCON still had but little influence in the world. People considered it a small, exotic religious sect. But by the blessings of the previous acharyas, it was growing. Prabhupada was initiating more and more disciples, and the potential was unlimited. And yes, it was unlimited because the whole world could join. But Prabhupada did say someplace that practically speaking, it's not possible for the whole world to become Krishna conscious. He said even if we can convert, I don't know, he said 1% or 10%, that would be sufficient. One of Lord Chaitanya's chief followers, Jiva Goswami, had warned that a spiritual master should not accept many disciples. Many neophyte disciples would bring suffering to the spiritual master. He had done Prabhupada's US tour during the summer of 1971. He initiated more disciples than ever before. As Lord Chaitanya's empowered representative, he wanted to increase the number of devotees more and more. He was aware of the risk, but he was also aware of the great need, as he had written in the Nectar of Devotion. The one point is that without increasing the number of disciples, there is no propagation of the cult of Krishna consciousness. Therefore, sometimes, even at a risk, a sannyasi in the line of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu may accept even a person who is not thoroughly fit to become a disciple. Later on, by the mercy of such a bona fide spiritual master, the disciple is gradually elevated. However, if one increases the number of disciples simply for some prestige or local or false honor, he will surely fall down in the matter of executing Krishna consciousness. So that risk is always there for spiritual master, one who accepts the disciples. First, he has to be fully qualified, fully empowered. And then he has to be careful in accepting the disciples, the number of disciples, the quality of disciples. So many times they take risk. And risk could be that he could fall down. Risk could be that he might become so sick. So it's not some cheap thing. Disciple also has to be very careful on whom to accept the initiation from. Very, very careful. Because it's also said by Prabhupada that a disciple cannot make more progress than a spiritual master. If a spiritual master is a Madhyam Adhikari, disciple cannot become more than that. Unless then he takes shiksha from somebody else. So it's complex, very, very complex procedure. But good thing, we are with the protection of Srila Prabhupada, reading his books. He is the most prominent Shiksha Guru. So that way we are very safe. So both ways, disciple and spiritual master has to be very careful. Srila Prabhupada's test of a prospective disciple's readiness for initiation was standard. Candidate must have followed the 4 rules and chanted 16 rounds daily for at least 6 months and have the recommendation of the temple president and local GVC secretary. Prabhupada accepted anyone who fulfilled these conditions, and he expected the disciple to remain sincere and true to the vows of initiation. Despite Prabhupada's growing number of disciples, he intimately touched each of them. Although a few disciples enjoyed extended association with him, most of his hundreds of disciples saw him only from afar. Yet each of them was certain that Prabhupada was his own. Each would say, my spiritual master. Each would say, Prabhupada, and feel close to the dearest friend and well-wisher, the one who was saving them from death. They knew that Prabhupada was the direct representative of Krishna and the most empowered acharya of Lord Chaitanya's message. Those who were sincere knew without doubt that the connection with Prabhupada was transcendent, not to be interrupted or limited by physical or geographical considerations. And not just this connection is limited by physical or geographical, it's not limited by birth also. Every life after life is my spiritual master. That's the connection between disciple and spiritual master. And even in the spiritual world, the spiritual master, in whatever form and whatever form disciple may be in, he continues to guide him, continues to help him, continues to engage him in Krishna's service. If they surrendered to Prabhupada's order, Krishna within their hearts would help them advance. If they were sincere, Krishna would help them become better disciples of Srila Prabhupada. The devotees' love for Prabhupada was not a vague sentiment. It was engaging them in Krishna's service, and they were directly experiencing the transcendental results. Only a devotee, however, could understand Prabhupada's personality on the depth of his disciples' attraction for him or the debt they owed him. No wonder onlookers at the Detroit airport had not understood the apparently delirious devotees in the blissful reception of Srila Prabhupada. Then from there he went to New York City, July 19th, 1971. After Detroit, Prabhupada visited Boston and then flew to New York, where another large group of devotees had gathered. The New York Daily News covered his airport arrival with photos and an article, Swami, how they love you. Bhavananda, the New York temple president, had decorated the temple room of the Brooklyn Center with bright colors. Prabhupada's Vyasasana was a special creation of plates, stripes, and checks in fuchsia, lime, black, white, and red. Prabhupada liked it very much. 200 devotees, many having waited for more than a year to be initiated, converged on the Brooklyn temple, and Prabhupada held initiation for 5 consecutive days, initiating around 24 disciples each day. One after another, the young men and women would approach Prabhupada on his multicolored Vyasasana to receive the initiation beads and spiritual names. Those receiving the Brahman initiation went one by one to see Prabhupada in his room and received the Gayatri mantra. The Brahman initiation, Gayatri mantra is given by the spiritual master in the right ear of his disciple. It's not public thing. So publicly the yajna happens, but the Gayatri mantra is given by spiritual master into the right ear of his disciple. And that is why Gayatri mantra is not supposed to be chanted publicly. Now we get tapes and all sorts of things for Gayatri mantra, but it's not supposed to be chanted publicly. It's a secret mantra. And why right ear? Why not left ear? Right ear because it is considered right ear also has all the holy rivers. And that is why when we evacuate, we roll our thread, sacred thread on our right ear. So it remains pure. And once we wash our hands, or if we have bath stool, then we take shower, then we can unroll the sacred thread. So there are some technical things. Madhumangal. I went to Prabhupada's room and offered obeisances. Come here, he said. So I went and sat close to him. He began teaching me the Gayatri mantra, and I was looking up at him. The sun was right behind his head. He looked like a mountain, like the Himalayas, and I was like a mole, a stone. He was very big, and I seemed very insignificant. Rikhtanand, Prabhupada turned to face me, and his eyes seemed like limitless pools of an entrancing liquid. I knew he was focused always on Krishna, and his eyes were a reflection of that happiness. It said something to me, and I said, "No, sir." Saying sir to him seemed natural. And he seemed to be happy that I had said it. Then, in a very clear, soft, steady voice, he began to teach me the Gayatri mantra. Then he took the sacred thread and put it around my neck and across my shoulder. Very gracefully and with such precision in his movements. Now he said, "You're a Brahman." Devi Shakti. Prabhupada had the Gayatri mantra written on a small piece of paper, and as he was teaching it to me, he had his eyes closed. I would repeat it word for word after him. When he got to the 3rd line, however, instead of saying Guru Devaya, he said the word from the 5th line. I didn't know whether to follow what he said, or just say what was on the paper. So I said what was on the paper, and then Prabhupada immediately realized what he had done and changed it. But I suddenly realized that the perfect chanting of mantras was not so significant. Prabhupada was fully absorbed in thinking of Krishna, and although there may have been some apparent flaw in his pronunciation, he was perfect, regardless. I saw that the real perfection of devotion service was to follow Prabhupada. That was true. Similarly, even in his books, there could be some grammatical error, some error here or there, but we just follow Prabhupada. That's it. And the real perfection lies in that. After I received my Gayatri Mantra, I asked Prabhupada if I could ask him some questions. And he said, yes. Srila Prabhupada, I said, I haven't been able to serve you in rapt attention. What can I do to serve you? I was praying he would give me a special service to do for him, but personally, chant Hare Krishna was all he said. Is there anything more? I asked. He said, are you married? I said, yes. So he said, serve your husband. I said, my husband, I don't get along. So he said, be a pujari. There are so many things. His answers seemed to solve all my difficulties. First and foremost was to chant Hare Krishna. And in addition to that, there are so many other services. If you don't do one of them, then go on to the next one. There's so many things. When he said those words, it relieved all my anxiety. So this is Prabhupada. How he's helping his disciples, how he's uplifting his disciples. It's just amazing. And just like here, Devi Shakti Mataji, now she lives in Vrindavan, is serving in Vrindavan temple. But as I said, Gayatri Mantra is not supposed to be given to ladies in perfect Brahminical Shastric terms. And in fact, this is also one of the points of the Indian Brahmins, Smarta Brahmins, that even Gayatri Mantra is not supposed to be given to Malechas, Yavans, means those who are outside Varnashram system. Not even outside Varnashram, even Shudras cannot chant Gayatri Mantra, although they are in Varnashram system. But Prabhupada, first, he followed the six Goswamis, and this is mentioned in the scriptures, that one, if he has taken shelter of a bona fide spiritual master, then he can become a Brahman or a sannyasi or a guru. There is nothing wrong with it. It's not just one has to be born in a Brahminical family to do that. And then for ladies, he made exceptions that they can chant Gayatri Mantra. He didn't give them sacred thread, but he let them chant Gayatri Mantra and become pujari, do deity service. This was revolutionary, and only Prabhupada could do that. Okay, I guess we can stop here. See anybody has any questions or comments? Okay, you all have a safe and wonderful day. Hare Krishna. Jai Srila
Hare
Prabhupada.
Krishna. Thank you, Prabhuji. Jai Srila